I'm Amber Lee, 33 years old, and I knew something had shifted the second I saw the photo my mother had posted on Facebook there. They all were lined up in front of a resort sign, grinning in matching floral shirts. Hawaii had always been our dream trip, but I wasn't in the picture, and I hadn't been invited. Not really, they told me I could join if I paid my own way. $4,000 plus airfare and meals. What they didn't know was that I'd already booked the same resort, and I wouldn't be coming alone before I dive into everything that happened. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever been treated like the outsider in your own family. I grew up in Fresno, California, right in the middle of 3 kids, in a house where the rules were soft for some and hard for others. My dad worked long hours in finance, and my mom stayed home with us, mostly running the house, by instinct, not fairness. My sister Valerie was always the center of attention. She got the trophies, the speeches, the framed photos on the mantel. Brian, the youngest, was coddled. He was the boy, the late baby, the one they always made room for. I was the steady one, the helper, the quiet middle. When Valerie turned 18, they sent her off to a private college in Boston. Everything covered, full tuition, dorm meals, even a monthly stipend. And when she graduated, they threw a huge party, catered backyard tents. Dad cried during his speech about her future 3 years later. When I started college, the tone changed. Mom said, they could cover half maybe, but I'd need to work part-time and take out loans. I nodded, said I understood. I thought maybe money was tight. I took a job at the student cafe and stayed up late every night trying to keep up with classes. Then came Brian's turn, and suddenly the funds were flowing again. They paid for his full tuition and surprised him with a new car so he wouldn't have to ride the bus to his internship. I said nothing, just smiled through it at Sunday dinners when I finally got my license and bought a used Honda with over 100,000 miles on it. No one clapped. No one asked how I managed it. When Valerie got married, they gave her $30,000 for the wedding and helped her and her husband with the down payment on their first home. When Brian landed his first job, they took him shopping for suits and covered a chunk of his rent so he could live closer to the city. Meanwhile, I was still in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate and a credit card balance from emergency dental work. I used to tell myself maybe they saw something stronger in me, maybe they thought I didn't need the help, that it was their way of showing respect. But deep down, something never felt right. Not when every major milestone for me came with a price tag, while theirs came with applause. Last spring, we were all at Dad's 60th birthday dinner when Mom leaned forward and said they had something exciting to share. We're planning a family vacation to Hawaii this summer. She said we've talked about it for years, and now that Brian has that great new job, it feels like the right time. I smiled and nodded. I had vacation time saved and could already picture us on the beach together. Maybe this was the moment I'd finally feel part of things. Then came the pause. We'll be covering the trip for Brian, of course, and for Valerie and Mike, too. They've been so stressed with the twins lately, Mom said lightly. But Amber, you're absolutely welcome to come if you can manage the cost. The package is about $4,000, but it includes everything. I smiled as best I could, said it was a little out of budget, but I hoped they'd have a great time. Dad asked if I was sure, but I could hear the relief in his voice. Brian looked over at me, said nothing. Valerie was already showing Mom photos of the resort on her phone. I got in my car and didn't make it halfway down the street before the tears came. It wasn't just the trip. It was the fact that once again I was optional. But that night I opened my laptop and started planning something else. The next morning I called Tara. I didn't plan to cry, but once I heard her voice, the words just poured out. She listened without interrupting, then said plainly, "They're not even hiding it anymore." I said maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe money was tight. Tara reminded me that if money were really the issue, they wouldn't be booking a luxury resort in Hawaii, and they definitely wouldn't be covering expenses for Rachel. That part stopped me. Rachel. "What do you mean?" I asked. Tara hesitated. "I thought you knew. Brian told Ryan last weekend that your parents are paying for Rachel too." My stomach dropped. No one had mentioned it to me, not even Brian. 8 months of dating and she was practically family. But me, I had to pay my own way or not come at all. Later that evening, I sat on the couch staring at old photo albums. The beach trip where Valerie got her own room while I slept on the pull-out sofa. The ski trip where they paid for lessons for both my siblings, while I was told to wander the village shops alone. The college visits I never got, just brochures and web searches, while Valerie and Brian toured campuses with our parents. It wasn't a one-time thing. It had been this way all along. A few days later, Mom called to talk about a recipe. Before hanging up, she casually brought up the trip again. "We got an amazing deal through your father's company," she said, "almost 30% off the whole thing." I asked which program it was. "Oh, it's just something through Marshall Financial, corporate perks," she said quickly. "Only employees can access it." I thanked her and ended the call. I opened my laptop and typed Marshall Financial Travel Discount. Several results came up. One Reddit post caught my eye. A user mentioned Elite Journeys, the company Marshall partnered with, and said the discounts extended to immediate family, parents, children, siblings. I read it twice. If that was true, I should have been eligible. But they never mentioned it. I scrolled through my contacts and found Diana Morris. We were roommates my second year of college. She'd been working at Marshall for a few years now. I stared at her name for a long time before hitting dial. When she answered, her voice was bright and familiar. After a few minutes of catching up, I told her why I'd called. I explained I was considering a trip to Hawaii and had heard Marshall had a great travel benefit. "Oh yeah," she said. "Elite Journeys. The discounts are incredible. Are you going through a family member?" I kept my voice even. "That was the plan, but there's been some confusion about eligibility. I wasn't sure how it really works." Diana explained the whole thing. Immediate family could use the discount. All they needed was a code and a quick form confirming the relationship. Then she paused. "If you're having trouble, I could probably help. Honestly, they don't monitor it that closely." I thanked her and said I'd think about it. After we hung up, I just sat there staring at the wall. Was I really going to book the same vacation behind their backs? Was I really doing this out of hurt? I wasn't sure, but I knew something had to change. The next day my phone rang. It was Brian. "Just checking in," he said. "We haven't talked in a bit. We chatted for a few minutes. He mentioned work, then the trip. You sure you can't come? It'd be more fun with you there." I reminded him the cost was too much for me. "Yeah, I get that. I'm really grateful Mom and Dad are covering it for me and Rachel. She's never been to Hawaii before." My breath caught. "They're paying for Rachel too." There was a pause. "I thought you knew. Dad said she's basically family now." I managed to say something polite, but after we hung up, my mind was made up. I called Diana back and told her I'd like to take her up on the offer. "Wailea Beach Resort," I said. "First 2 weeks of August." With her help, I booked the exact same resort, same dates, but a better room and a lower price. The total came to just under $2,500. Still a stretch, but manageable. I dipped into my savings and confirmed the reservation. When the email came through, I sat there staring at it. I didn't know if it was brave or foolish, but it felt right. That evening I met Josh for dinner. We'd been dating for a few months, long enough to feel real. I told him everything. The years of unequal treatment, the vacation, the plan to show up unannounced. He listened, then said, "Sometimes people need to see it to understand it. You're not trying to start a fight, you're just refusing to be invisible." I asked if he thought I was overreacting. He shook his head. "I know how that feels. My older brother was the golden child, too. They bought him a car, helped him start a business. I was the one who figured things out alone. That quiet understanding settled something in me. I asked if he wanted to come. He said yes without hesitation." Over the next few weeks, I kept up appearances. Sunday dinners, polite texts, nothing to give away what I was planning. Josh and I made our own travel plans. Flights, activities, clothes. We decided to arrive 3 days before my family. It would give us time to adjust to settle in before facing them. 2 weeks before the trip, Valerie invited me to lunch. We sat at a cafe near her house, sipping iced tea and catching up. Toward the end, she said, "Mom mentioned you were upset about the trip." I kept my tone light. "She did." Valerie looked uncomfortable. "She feels bad, but you know how money is right now." I nodded. "Except there seems to be plenty for you and Brian." "That's not fair," she said quickly. "Brian just started his career. Mike and I have the twins. You're established. You've always been the independent one." "Because I had to be," I said. "Not because I wanted it that way." She looked flustered. It's not like they treat us differently. I leaned forward. They paid for your college. I got half. They paid for your wedding. I'll probably elope. They helped with your house. I'm still renting. She looked down at her glass. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. They also helped us with the IVF. I blinked. What? 25,000, she said. It was a medical necessity. I didn't respond at first, just sat there, remembering when I asked them to help refinance my loans and they told me they couldn't. I'm glad they helped you, I said finally. But it proves the point. They find the money when it matters to them. Valerie looked at me like she didn't know what to say. You never asked, she said weakly. Because I learned not to, I replied. That night Josh helped me pack. I told him about lunch, about the IVF. Have you heard of family roles, he asked. Scapegoat, golden child. I shook my head. We sat together reading articles. One described the scapegoat as the one who develops resilience and then gets punished for it by being left out. I called Tara the next day and told her everything. It explains so much, I said. They built a system and I never had a say in it. Tara just said, and now you do. Josh and I flew into Maui on a Tuesday afternoon. The airport was smaller than I expected, but the air was warm and sweet, and I could smell the ocean the moment we stepped outside. We caught our shuttle to the resort, and I kept checking my phone, even though there were no new messages. The ride was quiet, except for the sound of waves in the distance and the soft hum of tires on pavement. When we pulled up to the Wailea Beach Resort, I felt my chest tighten. The building was grand, but not flashy, all clean white lines and wide glass windows wrapped in palm trees that swayed gently in the breeze. A valet helped with our luggage, and the front desk staff greeted us with leis and bright smiles. Everything was smooth, quiet, professional. Our room was on the 4th floor with a balcony that faced the ocean. I stepped out and leaned on the railing. Below us, the pool shimmered in the sun, and just beyond it, the waves rolled steadily toward shore. Josh came up beside me. Still sure about this, he asked. I nodded. I didn't say anything else. That evening we had dinner at a small outdoor restaurant near the water. Our server was a woman named Carolina, maybe in her mid-30s, with a calm voice and a warm smile. She asked if we were celebrating anything, and I told her it was more of a personal trip. Something in the way she looked at me made me think she understood more than I'd said. As the night went on, she mentioned that she'd moved to Maui after leaving behind a difficult family situation. My parents always had more time and money for my brother, she said, setting down our drinks. He was the golden child. I was just extra. She smiled softly. I came out here to start over. Her words stayed with me long after we left. The next day, Josh and I snorkeled near a reef close to the resort. The water was clear and warm, filled with bright fish and soft currents. We hiked a short trail that ended at a quiet overlook, and we spent the afternoon reading under an umbrella by the beach. It was peaceful. Still, I checked the resort app and the social media updates more often than I should have. Thursday night, I saw the first post. A photo from the airport, my parents Valerie and Mike, Brian, and Rachel, all smiling with their carry-ons. Off to paradise, the caption read. I showed Josh the picture. He looked at it for a long time and didn't say anything. That night I didn't sleep well. I kept going over the plan in my head. Should I approach them the next morning? Wait until dinner. Would they be angry, confused, embarrassed? What would I even say? Josh stayed quiet as I moved around the room, fluffing pillows and adjusting the curtains. He never told me to calm down. He just sat with me. Carolina texted the next morning. She'd seen the family check in just after midnight. Looks like they're heading to breakfast around 9, she wrote. Do you want me to reserve your usual table? I stared at the message for a while before typing back, yes, please. Same table. 8:45. We got there early. I couldn't eat much, just nursed a cup of coffee while Josh tried to keep conversation going. I kept glancing toward the entrance, my heart ticking faster with every passing minute. At exactly 9:12, they walked in. My dad first wearing sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, then Mom in a white cover-up and sandals. Valerie had a large beach bag slung over her shoulder. Mike followed holding hands with one of the twins. Brian and Rachel trailed behind, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I raised my hand. Mom, Dad, over here. 6 faces turned toward me at once. It was like watching a row of dominoes fall. Surprise, confusion, then silence. Brian recovered first. "Amber," he said, walking toward me. "What are you doing here?" I stood. "Surprise," I said calmly. "I decided to come after all." My mother's face tightened at the edges. "What a coincidence," she said. "Not really," I said. "I heard so much about this place I decided to book a trip for the same dates." "Hope that's all right." Dad stepped forward. "Of course it is. We're just surprised." Valerie looked at me without smiling. "How did you even afford this?" she asked. "I got a discount," I replied. "Almost 40% off, through Marshall Financial. Same program you all used, actually." Dad shifted his weight. "You have a friend at Marshall." "I do," I said. "She helped me out. Turns out the discount applies to immediate family, too. Isn't that something?" The pause was long enough to feel. Then Josh stood and held out his hand. "Josh Sullivan. Nice to meet you." My dad took it automatically. "Nice to meet you, too." "We didn't know Amber was bringing someone," Mom said, voice level. "Last-minute decision," Josh replied. "She mentioned the trip, and I had some time off saved up. Couldn't pass it up." Mom took a breath. "Would you like to join us for breakfast?" I looked at Josh, then nodded. "We'd love to." The staff moved quickly to push 2 tables together. I ended up seated between Josh and Brian, directly across from my parents. The conversation was slow at first. Brian tried to include us, asking if we'd done any of the excursions yet. "There's a great snorkeling tour tomorrow," he said. "You two should come." Before I could answer, Mom cut in. "But I'm sure Amber and Josh have plans. We wouldn't want to impose." I looked at her. "Actually, we don't have anything scheduled yet." "That sounds nice." Brian smiled. "Great. I'll send you the info." After breakfast, we all walked down to the beach. Josh and I had already explored most of it, so we showed them where the beach chairs were better spaced, where the umbrellas got more shade in the afternoon. Rachel thanked me, her voice quiet. Valerie kept her distant sunglasses always on. My parents stayed polite, but I could feel it underneath, tension that pressed in around the edges. As Josh and I headed back to our room later, I heard Mom's voice behind me, low but sharp. "I can't believe she would do this. What is she trying to prove?" I didn't hear Dad's answer. In the room, I sat on the bed and exhaled slowly. That was harder than I thought. Josh sat next to me. "You're not the one who should feel uncomfortable." I nodded but didn't respond. That evening, we had dinner at one of the resort's nicer restaurants. Josh and I arrived early, and the rest of the family joined us one by one. The mood was different, less stiff, but still cautious. Brian asked Josh more questions about his job. Rachel talked about a hike she wanted to try. My parents smiled through most of it. Valerie stayed quiet. Halfway through the meal, she put her fork down. "I still don't get it," she said. "Why didn't you just tell us you were coming?" I looked straight at her. "Do you really want to know?" The table went still. "Yes," she said. "I would." I folded my napkin. "Because I wanted you all to know what it feels like to be left out. That's what happened when you planned a trip and told me I could only come if I paid for everything myself. No one else had to do that." Mom spoke next. "Your siblings have different financial needs." "Do they?" I asked. "You paid for Valerie and Mike. You covered Brian and Rachel. I live on one income." "How is that not a financial need?" Dad said quietly. "We've always tried to help where it was most needed. And who decided I didn't need it?" I asked. Who decided Rachel deserved more consideration than I did? Who decided to pay for Valerie's second home and not tell me? Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know," she said. "No offense taken," I told her. "This isn't about you." Valerie crossed her arms. "So, this was about embarrassing us?" "No," I said. "It was about finally being seen." The table was silent again. I didn't say more. There wasn't anything else to add. We finished the meal quietly. Then we all stood up slowly like no one was sure what to do next. Back in our room, Josh asked me if I thought I went too far. I didn't answer right away. The next morning, Josh and I had breakfast in our room. I wasn't ready to sit through another tense family meal. We ate quietly by the window, watching the early light stretch across the water. Around 10, my phone buzzed. It was Brian, still on for the snorkeling tour, meet in the lobby at 11. I stared at the screen for a moment. Josh looked up. "What does it say?" I handed it to him. He read it, then said, "Do you want to go?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think we should." We got ready, grabbed our sunscreen and towels, and headed downstairs. When we arrived in the lobby, Brian and Rachel were the only ones there. "The others decided to hang back today," Brian said. "Mom and Dad said they needed rest. Valerie and Mike probably just didn't want to deal with more tension." The snorkeling tour was quiet at first. The four of us boarded a small boat with a few other guests, and the guide gave instructions about gear and safety. We cruised out past the shoreline until the water turned deep blue. As we got into the water, I let the cool silence wrap around me. Fish darted below us. Rays of sunlight filtered through the surface. Back on the boat during a break, Brian pulled me aside. We stood at the railing watching the waves. "I've been thinking about what you said," he started. "At dinner." I didn't say anything. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I really didn't realize how different things were for you. I think I was just focused on my own stuff, you know?" I nodded. "I know. There's something else," he said. "I found out about something a few weeks ago. I didn't know if I should tell you." He paused, then added, "Mom and Dad helped Valerie buy a second house last year, a vacation place. They put down almost $100,000. I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "Lake Tahoe. Dad told me because he wanted my opinion on moving some assets around. It wasn't supposed to be public." I leaned on the railing watching the white foam trail behind us. "A second house," I said quietly. "I'm sorry," Brian said. "I didn't realize how much they'd done until I started comparing things in my head." "You weren't wrong." I gave a small nod. "Thanks for telling me." We didn't speak much after that. When the tour ended, we rode back in silence. Josh and I went to change, but before heading up to our room, we passed the pool area. My mother was sitting alone at a table shaded by an umbrella, staring out toward the beach. She saw me and gave a small wave. Josh glanced at me. "She wants to talk," he said. "Want me to stay?" I shook my head. "I'll be okay." He squeezed my hand and walked on. I crossed the patio and stopped by her table. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. She nodded and gestured to the chair across from her. We sat quietly for a while, the breeze moving through the palms. "Last night was a lot," she finally said. I nodded once. "It was. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect you to." She stopped. "Why bring all of this up now?" she asked. "Why here? Why during a family vacation?" I looked at her. When would have been the right time? At Thanksgiving, when everyone's too busy. At a birthday dinner. When people leave before the coffee's poured, she didn't answer. This was the first time you were all together with nowhere else to go. I needed you to hear me. She looked down at her folded hands. "We never meant to make you feel less important, Amber. We really didn't. We just thought you were the strong one." "I became strong because I had to," I said softly. "Because you didn't make space for me to lean on anyone." She didn't speak. The breeze picked up and lifted the edge of the tablecloth. I reached out to hold it down. She watched my hand. "Your father and I always tried to give what was needed," she said. "Valerie needed more guidance. Brian needed support. And you always figured things out, because I wasn't given another option," I replied. "And then you used that as the reason not to help me." She exhaled slowly. "I don't know what to say. I'm not asking you to rewrite the past, but I do want you to see the pattern and change how things work from now on." She nodded slowly. "What would that even look like?" "Not identical treatment," I said, "but equal consideration, inclusion, being thought of in the same breath, not as an afterthought." She looked up and met my eyes. "I'll need to talk to your father. This is a lot." "I know." We stood up together. She gave me a brief hug, the kind that lingers just long enough to count. I walked back to our room feeling drained. Not angry, not relieved, just still. Later that evening, I sat alone on the beach watching the horizon fade into gold. The tide came in slowly, soft and steady. My father approached from behind, hands in his pockets. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me. "Your mother told me what you talked about," he said eventually. I nodded. "I've been thinking about last night," he went on. "I've always tried to be a good father. Tried to give each of you what I thought you needed. But maybe I got it wrong." I turned to look at him. He stared at the waves. "When you didn't ask for help, I took that as proof you didn't need it. When you didn't complain, I assumed everything was fine. But maybe that was just you adjusting. I never asked why you had to." I didn't respond. The sun was almost down. I can't promise we'll get everything right going forward, he said. Old habits run deep, but I'll try to be more aware, more conscious. That's all I'm asking for, I said quietly. He nodded. And about the second house Brian told you, I'm guessing. That wasn't my idea. Your mother felt strongly about it, and I didn't push back. I see now how that fits into what you're saying. We stood there until the sky faded from orange to blue. Nothing fully resolved. But something shifted. The following evening, we all sat down for another family dinner. This time it was at a quieter restaurant on the resort's South Terrace, one with low lighting and a view of the water. The air felt heavy, like everyone was still sorting through what had been said the night before. No one brought it up directly, but the silence between topics stretched longer than usual. Toward the end of the meal, Valerie leaned back in her chair. So now what, she asked. You said your part. Are we just supposed to sit with that and move on? I set down my fork. I didn't say what I said to hurt anyone, but I also can't keep pretending it hasn't been this way. My father cleared his throat. We've been doing some reflecting, Amber. Your mother and I both have. My mother nodded but didn't speak. Josh sat quietly beside me, his hand resting lightly on his napkin. Brian looked from me to our parents. I think the rest of us need to do that too, he said. It's not just Mom and Dad. We all played into it. Rachel, who'd stayed mostly silent until now, turned to me. I appreciate you not blaming me. I didn't know anything about how deep this went. I gave a small nod. This isn't about you. It's about a pattern that's been there a long time. After dinner, we all walked back toward the main building. The group thinned out. Valerie and Mike peeled off first, saying the twins needed to wind down. My parents headed toward their suite, leaving just Brian, Rachel, Josh, and me standing near the elevator. Brian stepped closer. Want to grab a drink at the bar? Just the four of us. I looked at Josh, who nodded. Sure, I said. Let's. The bar was tucked away near the garden side of the resort, quieter and cooler. We found a corner table and ordered something light. For a while, the conversation stayed on safe ground, work, movies, things we missed about home. Then Brian leaned in. That list you pulled out the other night, was that just off the top of your head? I looked at him. No. I've been keeping notes. Not out of resentment, but because I needed to make sense of it. I don't blame you, he said. Honestly, I hadn't seen the full picture until you laid it out. It was sobering. Rachel added, It reminded me of my brother. My parents always gave him more car housing tuition help and told me it was because I was more capable. I didn't realize how deep that message went until I heard you say it out loud. Josh nodded. Same in my family. It's strange how it shows up again and again. We stayed at the bar until just past 10. When we stood to leave, Brian pulled me aside near the exit. There's more I want to say, but not here. Maybe tomorrow after the hike. Okay, I said. We'll talk then. The next morning, Josh and I took a long walk down the shoreline before breakfast. The resort was quiet, with only a few early risers out by the pool. As we walked, I thought about how it felt to finally say everything I'd held in for so long. I hadn't planned it all out this way, but it was happening. After breakfast, we joined the rest of the family for a catamaran ride. It had been on the itinerary for days, but until now, no one was sure whether we'd all be going. Valerie kept her distance, and our parents were polite but measured. Still, the mood was lighter than it had been. Out on the water, I stood at the railing with Josh, the breeze tugging at my hair. Brian joined us not long after, holding 2 drinks. Can we talk? He asked. I followed him to the shaded back deck. I told you last night there was more, he said. I wanted to be honest with you. Last year, when Dad asked for my input on that second house for Valerie, I thought it was odd, but I didn't ask questions. I waited, but I did some digging later. I found the paperwork. It wasn't just a gift. It was a transfer from a family trust, one I didn't know existed. And according to the date, it was set up about 10 years ago, right around the time you were finishing college. I stared at him. There's a trust. He nodded. Valerie's name was on it. Mine was added when I turned 25. Yours wasn't. I didn't respond at first. I wasn't sure I had words for it. I brought it up to Dad a few weeks ago. Brian went on. I asked why. He looked surprised, like he hadn't thought about it in years. Said he assumed you wouldn't want to be tied to it, that you were independent. I leaned back against the railing, letting the wind hit my face. I think he really believed that Brian said, but I also think it was a way to not have to think too hard about what was fair. "I appreciate you telling me," I said quietly. We stayed like that for a while, not saying much, just watching the waves pass beneath us. When the boat docked, everyone returned to the resort in small groups. Josh and I took our time stopping to get a smoothie before heading up to the room. Back in the elevator, he asked, "How are you holding up?" "I'm tired," I said, "but I don't regret any of it." Later that afternoon, I saw my mother in the gift shop standing by the postcards. She turned and spotted me. "You have a minute?" she asked. I nodded. We stepped outside to one of the garden paths. "I spoke with your father again this morning," she said. "We're working through things." I nodded once. "I know that doesn't fix everything, but I want to be clear we hear you now." We walked slowly, neither of us in a rush. "This isn't about repayment," I said. "I just don't want to feel like I'm constantly earning a seat at my own family's table." She stopped walking. "You don't have to. Not anymore." We parted quietly. She went back inside. I sat on one of the benches and looked out toward the trees. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide if I belonged. That evening, we all went on a sunset cruise. It was the first full family activity since the day I arrived. The boat wasn't crowded, just a small group of tourists and a 3-person crew. There was soft music playing and a tray of appetizers passed around as we boarded. The sky was already starting to turn. Josh and I found a seat near the railing. Brian and Rachel sat across from us. My parents stood a few feet away talking quietly. Valerie joined them later, sunglasses still on, even though the sun had started to dip low behind the horizon. The boat pulled away from the dock. A breeze lifted the corners of the tablecloths. We were moving smoothly across the water now, with the shoreline slowly fading in the distance. Valerie approached just before the first round of drinks. She looked at me, then at the empty chair beside me. "Mind if I sit?" I motioned to the seat. "Go ahead." She eased down slowly. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice low, "about what you said the other night, about the pattern." I waited. "I still don't like how you did it, just showing up and putting it all out in front of everyone." She paused, then added, "But I guess I can understand why you did." I looked out over the water. "For a long time, I thought you liked being separate. I thought you liked doing things your own way. I made peace with it," I said. "That's not the same as liking it." Valerie nodded. She picked at the edge of the cocktail napkin on the table. "I never saw it that clearly before. But when you laid it out?" "Yeah." It was hard to deny. We sat quietly until Rachel came by and asked if we wanted to go up to the top deck. Valerie said she'd stay, then looked over at me again. "If we're going to fix this, it won't be overnight." "I know," I said. The cruise wrapped up just as the last pink streaks left the sky. On the way back to the resort, my father pulled me aside. "We're having breakfast on the balcony tomorrow morning. Just your mother and me. Join us if you'd like." I said I would. The next morning, I found them at a small table overlooking the water. My mother was already pouring coffee into the second cup. My father stood as I walked over, then sat back down quietly. For a moment, we just listened to the waves. "We've been talking," my mother said, "trying to be honest with each other. With ourselves." My father nodded. I think we were so focused on the needs right in front of us that we didn't stop to look at the whole picture. I said nothing. He went on. "Your mother told me what you said during your walk, about not wanting to earn your seat at the table." My mother looked over at me. "You shouldn't have had to feel that way. That's not the family we want to be." She took a breath. "We can't undo the past, but we'd like to do something going forward." They told me they were meeting with a financial advisor after the trip, that they planned to create new trust accounts for each of us, equal this time. Not tied to marriage, not tied to children, just because we were their kids. "It's not about the money," my father said. "It's about what it represents." I nodded once. That was all I could do right then. The next few days passed more easily. There were still moments of tension, but they didn't last as long. Josh and I went with Brian and Rachel on a short hike. Valerie invited us to dinner on our last night, something I didn't expect. My parents were quiet through most of the meal, but they didn't pull away. As we walked back from dinner, Josh leaned in. "You feel different." I looked over at him. "A little." like we've turned a corner. Not all the way, but enough. On our last morning, I stood on the balcony one final time. The sky was still soft with early light. Below, someone was setting up beach chairs for the day. I heard a knock at the door. It was Brian. "Just wanted to say goodbye," he said. "And thanks." "For what?" "For starting something that needed to be started, even if it was uncomfortable." Josh joined us at the door, suitcase in hand. We walked out together, the three of us, and stepped into the soft morning air. 1 month after we returned from Hawaii, I hosted dinner at my apartment. It was the first time we'd all been in my home at once. My place wasn't big, just a 2-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor, but I cleaned it top to bottom, bought fresh flowers, and pulled out the nicest dishes I had. Josh came early to help. He chopped vegetables while I stirred sauce. We didn't talk much. Everything that needed to be said had already been said on that island. Around 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My parents arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine and a pie from a bakery near their neighborhood. Valerie came next, holding the twins' school drawings like they were greeting cards. Mike followed behind her, quiet as always. Brian and Rachel arrived last, arms full, wine, dessert, a bouquet. We eased into the evening. Appetizers first. Conversation stayed light. Valerie told a story about the twins at preschool. My father asked Josh about his physical therapy clients. My mother complimented the throw pillows on my couch. It was awkward in the beginning, like we were all speaking a slightly different dialect. But slowly, the tension thinned out. By the time we sat down for dinner, something had shifted. I served lasagna, my father's favorite. I'd made it the night before and reheated it carefully that afternoon. As we passed the bread and salad, I noticed how everyone lingered a little longer when someone spoke. It felt different, more deliberate. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. That same small sound he always made before giving a toast or saying something serious. The table quieted. "Your mother and I," he began, "have been thinking a lot since our trip. And we've had some long talks about fairness, about how we've shown support over the years." My mother nodded gently beside him. "We realize now that the way we divided help wasn't always balanced," he continued. "We made decisions in the moment, sometimes out of convenience, sometimes out of habit. But we want to do better." He reached under his chair and pulled out a slim folder. Inside was a letter from their financial advisor and a 1-page summary. "We've set up equal trust accounts for each of you. Same amount, same terms, no restrictions. Use it how you see fit, housing, education, savings." He passed the pages down the table. Valerie glanced at them, then looked up. "You're serious?" she asked. "We are," my mother said. "We should have done it this way from the start." I couldn't say anything for a moment. I just sat there, hands resting on the tablecloth, my heart steady. "Thank you," I said finally. "That means a lot. It's not just about the money," my mother added. "It's about acknowledging we've made some wrong turns, and we're trying to turn them around." The rest of dinner flowed more easily. There were second helpings and fresh stories. My dad laughed at something Brian said. Valerie showed Rachel a photo on her phone. I stayed quiet for a while, just listening. After we cleared the table, we moved to the living room. Coffee, pie. Josh poured drinks while the others settled onto the couch and armchairs. Kyle raised his mug at one point. "To new beginnings," he said, and to my sister Amber for saying what needed to be said. There was a pause, then a soft hum of agreement around the room. Even Valerie nodded, her expression thoughtful. She looked over at me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for not seeing it sooner." I gave her a small smile. "We're here now." As the night wrapped up, my parents thanked me for dinner. My mom pressed a small, wrapped box into my hand. Inside was a bracelet. Nothing flashy, just simple silver with a stone in the middle, similar to one I'd admired years ago, but never bought. "It reminded me of you," she said. "I thought you might like it." They left just after 10, lingering at the door a little longer than usual. Josh stayed to help clean. As we wiped down the counters and loaded the dishwasher, I caught myself standing still in the middle of the kitchen, hands resting on the sink. "That went well," I said. "They're trying," Josh replied. "It shows." The following Saturday, I met Tara for coffee. We sat outside under a wide umbrella while the city moved around us. I told her about the dinner, the trust accounts, the toast. Honestly, she said, I didn't think they had it in them. I'm not sure they did, I said, until they had to look at it head on. Sometimes that's the only thing that works, she said, the quiet pressure of the truth. Later that week, I got a text from my mother. Just a short one. Thinking about a beach house in North Carolina for next summer. Everyone's invited, expenses covered. Thoughts. It was the smallest message, but something in the wording caught me. Everyone. Covered. Equal. I didn't respond right away. I read it twice, then again. Then I set the phone down, took a deep breath, and looked around my living room. For once, it felt like a place where I truly belonged. It's been a few months since that evening in my apartment. The seasons turned, and life found its quieter rhythms again. Sunday calls with my mother, photos from Valerie of the twins playing in the yard, texts from Brian with a new recipe or just a joke. No one pretends everything is perfect, but there's more honesty now, and a little more patience too. Looking back, I see the turning points clearly. Not just the confrontation in Hawaii, but every moment I found my own voice even when it shook. The shift didn't happen overnight. Old habits have a way of creeping back, but someone always notices. Now sometimes it's my father pausing before he speaks. Sometimes Valerie catching herself and starting again. Sometimes me standing a little taller at the table. The trust funds my parents set up aren't just about money. They're a sign that the pattern really did change. There's a shared sense of fairness that wasn't there before. Even the small things, my mother asking what I'd like for a family dinner, or my father looping me into a conversation about his retirement, feel different. Inclusion isn't an afterthought anymore. Last week, I got a group text from Rachel inviting all of us for a picnic at the lake. No assigned roles, no hidden rules, just everyone showing up, bringing what they could, sitting side by side on old blankets. For the first time in years, it felt like family meant belonging instead of comparison. Josh and I still talk about Hawaii sometimes, about the color of the water at dusk, the hush that fell over the table after I spoke the way truth can ripple through a room. He tells me that courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet act of saying no more and meaning it. I think he's right. If there's a lesson I carry with me, it's that fair treatment shouldn't be earned. It should be a given. Speaking up for yourself isn't selfish, and healing a family doesn't happen all at once. But every step matters. Dignity and kindness are choices made again and again sometimes in small, ordinary moments. If my story touched something in you, I hope you'll share it or pass it on to someone who needs a little encouragement. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up and say, I belong here too. Thank you for listening.